All right, so this is the start of the Heads Up Sports Podcast. We have two special guests with us here today. We have my father, Jeff, and then we have my uncle, Ivan. So these are two lifelong Mets fans, the ones who have put me into the misery, brought me into the realm of life of terrible, terrible sports, including this past weekend. So I brought them here to talk about some Mets stuff, and we could see, what we think of the Mets season and what we thought of the brief stint in the playoffs. So who wants to go first and give a little introduction?
I'll go. It's fine. If you want us to start on, talking about the season and how it went before we get into the postseason, clearly there were several things that went on. Mets had their second best record, I believe, with 101 wins for the season. So on the outside, it looked really good statistically. The difference is, I think, if you look back on those other teams, and maybe not in 86. 86, there were a lot of injuries too, but certainly this year, the level of play from other teams was a little poor. So what was that 101 wins a little overstated? It's hard to weigh in. But certainly a good season if you look at it, just statistically. And it was really a very exciting season from April to July, August. It's September where the team just sort of fell off.
Yeah, so before we get into the Padres series, actually, we should probably back it up. Last time that we all spoke, it was before the Braves series, talking about how this was the biggest series of the year, going to determine who wins the NL East after being in the lead the entire time. And they lost all three games thanks to poor starting pitching, poor hitting, poor situational awareness. What do you guys think? What do you think of that Braves series?
Well, tune in here. A lifelong Mets fan as well. Over probably 50 years, I believe my first year being a Met fan was 6 years old. I have one world championship in 1986 that I can actually say that I really remember. That was my first experience. Ever since then, they've been losing. So it's one championship in 50 years that I know of. And I will say that my brother was right when he said it was a good season. But there's a lot of reasons I believe for that, and it's not as easy just to look at the statistics lie. And the greatest statistic the Mets faced are they had two teams in their division that were close or to 100 losses. And you look at any other division, it really wasn't that bad. So I think the Mets record probably wouldn't have been as good if they played in the National League West. I think if you had to go against the Padres, Arizona Diamondbacks, Los Angeles Dodgers, obviously, you would have a much different situation. So I think going into this series, when the Padres had about a 550 winning percentage, I thought the teams were pretty well matched. And in fact, the Mets were 2-4 against them. So it was the team I feared the greatest going into that series. I would have loved to have played St. Louis or Philadelphia. I think that was the best thing the Mets can do. As a team as a whole, this is nothing but a rerun to me. I've seen this all the time. I didn't expect any differently. In fact, I was calling it before it was in the second inning. I said how many runs the Mets would need to win that game. If you remember, I said they need 7, and they gave up 6. And that was just in the second inning. Not that I'm Nostradamus or anything, but just when you've seen it so many times, you knew it was coming, and Bassett surely didn't have it. The Mets were built on a team of pitching. They relied on that pitching. They thought that was going to bring them all the way because the National League, or actually major leagues right now, knows it's very difficult to put 4 or 5 consecutive hits in a row together. And the Mets really weren't able to do that because the Padres didn't assist them except in the second game, by walking everyone. But guess what? The Mets didn't get hit by pitch in the series. Maybe once, I think, Lindor in the beginning. But other than that, there really wasn't anything that I can recall that was major or significant. And the closest thing the Mets came to really making a splash in this series was wiping the ears of to find some, Vaseline or whatever, sticky stuff on his ears. Though usually, if it's Vaseline, that's not what they're using to get a high spin rate. So that was kind of backwards. But I agree with Buck Showalter, because how many Met fans would have gone after him if he didn't do anything? So he did the right thing, in my opinion. I know there's a lot of old timers that would say it was the wrong thing, but I agreed with it. So that's basically my comments. Just quickly an overview of the Mets. They're a good, solid team. but they're not a championship team. And I didn't expect them to win the series. They were 1-5 against the most critical games of the year. You know, Scherzer said he got kicked in the balls. You know, the whole team got kicked in the balls.
Do you think if the Mets win one of those 3 games against the Braves, let's say they still blow the series, against the Marlins or the Nationals, whoever they played at the end, do you think that would have made an impact against the Padres, getting a little confidence against a good team?
Meaning what? That they would still have to play the Padres in round 1?
They would still do a wild card. Let's say they still blow it against, but they towards the end of
So
the
in other
season,
words, they won the 1 game, but they end up still losing the division.
still
to the
losing the
Braves.
division. Yeah. Do you think that would have made any impact?
No,
I don't think
I
so.
think I think that the Mets had to win that to set their rotation. The rotation, Scherzer didn't pitch well in the game. I was there. As a fan standing there, the emotions were high. The fans were pretty wild, and you get that first home run in the first inning by the Padres, and you're sort of like, oh, this is not good. And then the next inning comes and there's more, and that just took the fans out of the game. And you knew this wasn't going to end well. But guys blow games here and there. So Scherzer certainly, lost that game. DeGrom ended up winning the second game, or the Mets were able to win the second game with DeGrom. I think had they beaten the Braves and let's say even paid the Padres in the next round, just keeping the same team, I really think Bassett wouldn't have been that third pitcher. I really think Taijuan Walker would have been that third pitcher because he was pitching better down the stretch. And because they couldn't set that, the possibility that because we didn't win that game, or we didn't really know if we could win the division, we ended up coming in that 4th seed, and at the same time, wasting Taijuan Walker in a game that maybe he shouldn't have pitched. And I think Taijuan Walker might have. Now, that being said, it really didn't matter what Taijuan Walker would have done in that in game 3, other than maybe he wouldn't have gotten hit earlier on like Bassett, and then maybe we could have gotten to the pitcher. But if their pitcher pitched the way he did, the greasy years aside, we still wouldn't have won. If you shut out, you're shut out. Listen, I wasn't. I know Ivan said he thought Buck did the right thing. I don't think he didn't. He just looked sad that that's what we came to. I think if he thought there was something going on, and he was interviewed earlier on, and he said, "Oh, is that what you're thinking?" I think there was something on the side. He goes, "Oh, if you think that's what I'm thinking, then I'm not happy with either it was the balls or strikes or something like that." Clearly, he was collecting baseballs. He was doing something. Maybe he shouldn't have waited until we were down 6-0 or 4-0 at that time. Maybe he should have done it 2-0. Maybe it would have meant something. I don't know. But the bottom line is, when he gets up there and he starts talking to the manager, to the umpires rather, what was the first thing ESPN did? They focused on the pitcher and honed in on his ears. So they thought it was pretty slimy too. Now, again, I don't know if that was the difference. And you're right. If it was Vaseline, I don't think it was Vaseline, but certainly they were the clearly, I mean, my ears aren't that way, but then again, I'm not pitching, so I'm not sweating. I've never seen a guy sweat just from the ears.
You know
It's
what?
me.
The Mets were losing 4-0 at that point, and that was the first thing I know watching on the TV. I was able to get up and scream, "Cheetah, Cheetah, Cheetah." I was excited.
Yeah.
So I don't know about you, but I love what Buck did there because I was down 4-0. I knew it was coming. It was going to be 6-0, maybe even worse. And he went out there, and I said, "Wow, they just throw him out. I don't know what happens. I really don't know what happens then. Do they cancel the game? I don't think so. I bet you Major League Baseball would just say you go forward with the game right there. And then I'd be like, well, what about all the other innings? Now we have like 3 innings to catch up." So the whole cockamamie thing, I don't think would have made sense anyway. But in terms of the Mets coming back, they probably wouldn't have scored anything. They looked like they were dead. But I'm going to push back on what you just said about that pitching staff. You know, I went out to the Oakland A's game, and I had the absolute pleasure of seeing Jacob DeGrom blow a 3-run homer that Alonso hit in the first inning. They came back, they scored, and then we were losing. He got blown out. So I think this started well before this Padres series. Jacob DeGrom was really excellent the first 5 games. He was unhittable. He was consistent considered an alien by some on the team. And then he came back and he completely collapsed. After that, Scherzer wasn't really good. In fact, Bassett and the two of them, if they pitched 8 innings, or at least Bassett, when he pitched 8 innings, I always knew the next game after that it wasn't going to work. He wasn't going to do well. And look at his starts; he didn't do well after that. He's never pitched in the pressure. And I don't know if you heard, you probably did, his comments, before the game and after the game about pitching in New York, how difficult it is. It's time to go back to Oakland over there where there's no pressure and no one cares what's going on. Bassett made $8.4 million last year. The Mets can find a better pitcher, $8.4 million. And I've had enough years of Taijuan Walker, by the way, of pitching spectacular in the first half of the season, only to drop dead and can't pitch well in the second. I had enough of him, and the cookie has crumbled. The Mets have 4 starting pitchers right now. They have to replace goodbye and good riddance. And I don't want to use that money for Jacob deGrom for another 38-year-old going to play 23 games during the season. Look at his salary this year. The guy's crying about making $33 million. He played half a season. That's equivalent to $66 million. And he's whining and complaining. Time to go. Get out. Who needs you? I'd rather take that $40 million, add 10. I don't even need Nimmo. Use his 10 that you were paying Nimmo. I think it was 7.5, whatever it was, and go get Aaron Judge. If the Yankees are stupid enough to let him go, that's the direction I would go. Aaron Judge played 150 games. Jacob deGrom played 23. And everyone said in the beginning of the year the Mets were going to win. Why? You met Scherzer, Jacob deGrom. Well, you got Scherzer next year. And Bassett, he's very easily replaceable. I think the Giants have a reliever. What's his name? Rodon? Go get him. That guy's spectacular from the Giants. He's a free agent. Go give him the money you should have given him last year because they could have got him when this year started. Bassett actually was the choice after him. They didn't get him. They should get him now. And guess what? Matt Scherzer and him will be just fine. You need to get some home runs. You need to get power. You get Alvarez with 25 home runs. Hopefully, you get Aaron Judge with 50 home runs. That's 85. I think the Mets had about 180 and 85. The Mets are the top 5 of all the major leagues in home runs. That's the direction I would go.
Well,
I don't like Taijuan or Cookie Carrasco.
Well, I like Taijuan a little bit more. He is a little younger, but Taijuan and Carlos Carrasco, they have player options, so it's not really even up to the Mets. You have Chris Bassett, which has got a mutual option, so I guess one of them can nix it. I don't know. You got deGrom, who's certainly on his walk year. There's nothing left there. And who do you have to replace it? Right now, you got Peterson and McGill. I don't know if that is necessarily spells those guys, but I mean, I don't know. You'd have to go out and get some starters. And then when you're talking about closers, Edwin Diaz is on his walk year. I know he wants to pitch with the Mets, but if they don't have the right salary, he's not going to stay. Trevor May is gone. Trevor Williams is gone. Adam Ottavino is gone, and so is Seth Lugo. So you're losing your entire pen, basically, and possibly 3 starters. This could go very bad, very quick.
Which one of those relievers did you want coming in a critical part other than Edwin Diaz?
None of them.
You don't need any of them then.
No, that's true. I'm not saying that.
Start over.
But you're saying that, you're going to free up all this money. You have to start over, but you're going to have to start over and pay for that. You don't have anyone coming up, is what I'm saying.
Agreed. I think they all were terrible, and I don't see the Mets signing any of them other than Edwin Diaz, who I believe does deserve his money because he brings more than just his spectacular play. He also brings a whole aura around him, with the trumpet thing, and the Met fans love that. And this is entertainment, folks. So obviously the Mets need Edwin Diaz. I think he's a big man they need to sign. They need to worry. The money needs to go with players that play 150 games. That's why if you listen to anyone, they always say out of the 3, Nimmo was the most important guy if you're going to resign any of the 3. Diaz was second, and everyone agrees that deGrom is last. The Mets do not need to spend $40 million on a guy who obviously doesn't want to play here. He can go. He doesn't care about winning. He can go down. Go play with the Marlins over there. Who knows? Maybe Texas, they'll take him. Or Atlanta. Maybe he'll go to Atlanta. Who knows? I mean, I heard chatter already. He's willing to accept less. He doesn't want to be on the Mets. So it's a non-issue. He doesn't want to be there. Let's take our money and utilize it in a proper way.
Who
and we can get
him on the Mets?
deGrom.
deGrom, okay.
Yeah, we could just replace any of these guys. I mean, I don't like Miguel. I'm very shaky. Peterson, I actually believe has a future. These lefties develop over time. I'm not so high on Tyler Miguel, but I think Peterson should be the number 5 starter on this team next year and let him develop. The Mets don't have any arms in the minor leagues, and that's the problem. I think their best arms are in a single A. And the Mets are about 2 or 3 years away from that. But remember that, Apple took over a situation just this year. I mean, he took a team from 77 to 101 with all our complaining, belly aching, and whining and crying. The truth of the matter is the Mets really did well this year. They went from 77 wins to 101. How many times, after the first pitch, the season was over, So it wasn't that way this year. So, kudos to them. Hats off. I really enjoyed the season. I thought they would, it was very entertaining. But, if you just want to analyze and pick on what didn't work, there are a lot of things that didn't work. We always said it during the year, this was a team with many holes. This is a team that going into the bullpen, you had one reliever. You can't function that way. The way the Mets were going to win this series, and everyone knew it, 2-1. Scherzer had to pitch 7-8 innings, 1-run ball. Same thing with DeGrom, same thing with Bassett. Guess what? They didn't live up to it now. Do you really believe at 39 and 40 years old they're going to start living up to it? I don't think it's going to happen. But you know what? We have all the money in the world. I love it. Let's try to get the best players we can. But the truth of the matter is, dynasties like the Braves are making consistently. I think what they win like 19 out of 20 the last National League East. I mean, it's totally insane. They do it from their minor leagues and they wrap everyone up. The Mets should be focusing on making long-term contracts with Alonso, with McNeil. Those are the guys they need to wrap up right now. I don't think there's anyone else. And actually, Escobar, he's not going anywhere. He's got $30 million come to him. And correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, but I do believe that we're paying Cano $20 million next year.
That's correct.
That's the last year. So there's $20 million right there. Maybe we could bring him back as the DH. I mean, that's just terrible. But
talking about that, maybe it is time to talk about DH. This is where the team really failed. No DH all season, and when they decided to finally give up on Dominic Smith and JD Davis, they replaced them with Vogelback, who had a couple of good games, was a fan favorite, but certainly did not fill the void because he wasn't going to hit both lefties and righties. And then you had Ruff and Naquin, and they were hideous. How did they miss so bad?
Yeah, I think the trade deadline is really where everything messed up. I think Darren Ruff was a failure. JD Davis, since going to San Francisco, has been on fire as soon as he left. Of course, the point of trading JD Davis to get a left-handed pitching specialist. Meanwhile, JD Davis, all he could do is hit lefties, was very silly to me. I think, you waited for a cold moment and then decided to trade for someone who was hot. The tides were going to turn. People were going to go back to the means. And ultimately, they made a poor decision, and it shows in the Padres series. Padres traded for Juan Soto. Was he the whole series? No, but he protected people in the lineup. He walked. He got a few big hits. And the Mets, we had Darren Ruff, who struck out every single time he went to bat, except for that one walk.
Well, because the Chicago Cubs said the reason they stopped actually calling and speaking to the Mets. I read an article. They were saying the reason they stopped doing that is the Mets, I think, were only willing to give like a top 5 prospect. The Mets weren't willing to let go of anyone. They have a very thin minor league system, and Stevie Cohen over there, God bless his soul, is really investing a lot of money in the minor leagues. I mean, it goes everything to the batting cages, everything he's implementing in the stadiums, the type of professionalism and expertise that he's offering these guys. It's just really going to go a far way. You got to really give it time. I applaud the Mets for not making a trade. I don't want to lose Beatty. I don't want to lose Vietz. I don't want to lose Alvarez. I don't want to lose any of these guys because it's the young guys who are going to make $700,000-$800,000 a year for 4 or 5 years, and that's how you build a championship. The Mets weren't supposed to be this far, this fast. They only did that because they had the money. They had the money to do it. So let's have a little faith in the Mets brass over there. I think they're going to do well. I think they're going to pick up guys. There's a lot of guys out there. Just they don't. We always over-evaluate or say our guys are better than they really are. And you take a look around the league, Taijuan Walker got picked up by the Mets when no one else wanted him. That's how the Mets got him so cheap. No one else wanted him. Take a look at the big picture, what's going on here. So, the Mets will find their way. It's 3 or 4 years down the line. Let's really see where this team is at that point. And, they got to sign McNeil. I think he's critical. He's critical.
Yeah, well, I think you bring up a very good point. And I think, the articles have said it, that the Mets are really making the investment in the minor league system. And I think when you look back on the season, we did very well. I think they did too well when it's all said and done. I think, it was a 5-year plan, right? We've been talking about the 5-year plan, year 2 of the 5-year plan, or I think it was year 2 that we just finished the 5-year plan. a 5-year plan isn't supposed to happen in year 2. It just so happened that everyone else in the division was not great, like Ivan said. You had two 100-game losers in your own division where you're paying 19 games against them in that division. So it's interesting that maybe Mets fans in the whole are very disappointed and want more and want to win next year. But I don't know, if you keep building next year, you might not win next year, but if you keep progressing, not maybe in the statistic, but your team keeps getting better and becomes a more solid team that's more sustainable. And to your point, the Mets did not want to trade anybody who was good in their minor league system because they want their minor league system to be the team of the future. And if you trade your future now to do what the Mets did and still lose, then you have squandered everything. The Mets have squandered nothing, to your point. They have Vientos, they have Beatty. Beatty had little signs of looking good at third base. Vientos really hasn't looked well, but I don't know. And you can't really say anything about Alvarez yet. So it does remain to be seen on that. But certainly, if you look at the Strawberries and the Goodens and Backman and all those guys who played in '86, these are all homegrown guys who came up all together. And that's really maybe what the Mets are doing. It's just that, oh crap, they won this year. I don't think that was supposed to happen. All we want to do is win more than 77 and say, we did well, but we won more than we should have. And when it came down to it, we didn't have what it took to play a team that was doing much better in September and October, where the Mets weren't.
Well, the Mets had, Billy Epler came on last minute, and so did Buck Showalter. I mean, Buck Showalter, when did he become manager of this team? I mean, how long? Buck Showalter took the Arizona Diamondbacks and brought them basically from an expansion team to a playoff team. This guy knows how to build organizations. He didn't really have much of a say of what was on this team. He was basically got hired. Here's your team. Do what you can. What is he going to do this year? I mean, what is he going to do over the next 3 weeks of evaluation and start thinking about really what's the best fit for this team is moving forward. He now knows, he didn't even know anyone on the team. He now knows everyone on the team. The only thing about Buck Showalter, and it always goes back, you got to mention it, 1,652 wins to 1,572 losses, only a 511 winning percentage, and worse than that, 10-16, 385 winning percentage in the playoffs. Again, Buck Showalter's never won the playoffs. But I mean, you never win until you do. So, I'm not going to really look too much into that. The guy was an A+ manager. Listen, he had Scherzer in the dugout. Everyone can see that, I think Gary Cohen even mentioned it. Mets got the value out of Scherzer, not DeGrom as much because Scherzer is a leader. When they clinched the playoffs, even Nimmo was commenting on how Scherzer was like a little kid running around there. Jacob DeGrom is very passive. He's not a leader. He's not that player the Mets are going to sign because he doesn't make a big difference in the clubhouse. And in fact, he was there for all these years and he never did. And they were falling apart last year. They had terrible management, as a manager lost control of that team. Buck Showalter settled the ship. Everything went smoothly. So, Mets are really in a great position here to move forward. But, the guy, what is it? I think they had committed already to 195 million or 200 million already on the payroll before we start. They hit 298 million on their payroll this year. They didn't exceed 300 million. They're going to exceed 300 million if they want to, even re-sign the players that they have. So, I don't know what he's really going to do. I understand Aaron Judge is a pipe dream possibly, but why is Aaron Judge a pipe dream when Jacob DeGrom is not for all the other teams? So, I look at anything can happen. Well, if he's not available, and the Mets really need to, I feel, get 3 quality arms for $40 million instead of sticking it in a guy who's going to probably only pitch about 25 games. And here's another thing about Jacob. Was he playing hurt? I mean, was this the year that he said, you know what, screw it, I got to play hurt because I got to get a contract next year? I mean, he was unhittable for 9 games. You want to say, oh, it was rust. If it was rust, why was he unhittable for the first 9 games? And then he wasn't unhittable after the rust wore off. No one ever addresses that. So, I think he could have been a little hurt. Obviously, Scherzer was hurt. He never got over that pain that, the injury he had. So, we'll see what happens.
Them being hurt, though, is one thing where that's part of the plan, part of the design. Not design, but part of the risk that you get when you take 2 35, 36-year-olds and put them on the mound. When we had the young Mets, when we had Harvey, Syndergaard, and DeGrom, when they're all young and they were getting hurt, you say, oh, bunch of freak accidents. With a 36-year-old, you expect that to happen. And ultimately it did. At the end of the season, DeGrom and Scherzer broke down. I mean, if those are your two best players, those are your two guys you need to excel in the playoffs, and they didn't. DeGrom did okay. He had the 6 innings, 2 runs. But Scherzer, you expect him to get hurt by the end of the year. That's what he did when he was on the Dodgers, and it's part of what happens when these players get older, and something that they need to consider when deciding whether or not to re-sign DeGrom, which I also agree that they probably shouldn't, but they might.
Who do you have more confidence in going into the next year? Dark Knight, Syndergaard, and DeGrom, or these 3 older pitchers? When the season ended in 2015, did you think you were going to have a dynasty for years to happen? And do you feel that same way now, even if they signed DeGrom?
I mean, I think that dynasty is over. I mean, it never came to be.
It never came to be, but that's looking at it in the past. I'm saying if at that moment, when the season ended and they lost to the Kansas City Royals, looking at those 3 pitchers at their youth.
Oh, it looked like it was going to be a dynasty for years.
I thought that I had more confidence, I guess is what I'm saying, after that season than I do actually this one. I thought Jeffrey brought up a good point. Statistically, the Mets may actually not win 101 games next year, but that doesn't mean they don't make progress.
And possibly a better team when it comes to playoffs.
It could be. It could be.
All right, so I think we're going to take a short break, and then we'll be right back.